Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Thursday, June 12th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. And these tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. And also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again, absolutely free. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one from that same web page, where people have been stepped through the worksheet process, and if you choose to listen to them even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness, and if you choose to do that before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app. That app contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. And we help people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. And if you have any of those to share with us, we would appreciate you doing so. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, or you can email Jeanie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And if we get a question or comment from you, we'll address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback or your input. If you're able to join us live through Zoom, our meeting ID number is 853-2357-4173. Again, that's 853-2357-4173. And you can call in on a phone line and enter that and just listen in, or you can open up a browser window for Zoom and enter that meeting ID number and join us directly with audio and video. And we greatly appreciate it whenever anybody chooses to do any of those things, because it makes it infinitely easier for us to live into our intention with this work. The intention we have with this work is to be of service, and that is just so much easier to do when people are willing to share with us how these things are landing for them. Is it helping? What's helping the most? Is it the reading we're doing with commentary of various books, or is it the people who decide to call in and step through a worksheet process? Is there a worksheet process we can assist you with? Etc., etc., etc. So We have plenty of
Hello,
time for,
Dr. Tim.
yes,
This is your swan song, right? You're not going to be on tomorrow.
that's correct. This is, I will be here today, and then I will not be back until Tuesday, the 24th.
Wow. So you're visiting Guy Finley and you're visiting family.
Well, just friends from
Oh,
high
friends from.
school, two friends from high school and one from graduate school that I will visit while I'm out there in
Mm-hmm.
the Oregon area.
Wow. And are you going to help Guy Finley move?
No,
And
I don't think so. I was talking to somebody about it yesterday, and I have no idea if I'm even going to be privileged to find out why he's moving and where and how and what's prompting this. But if he's offering it, I will gladly report back once I learn
yeah,
what the impetus is for his closing up his Life of Learning Foundation, and as they've talked about, having him move to Florida.
that's huge. Do you know where in Florida he's going?
No, no, I haven't heard.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I missed some things you were saying at the very first part of the program. I hope they weren't any more than your usual
It
spiel.
was just the usual so
Okay.
far.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, I'm you know, I was having the thought this morning as I was in the middle of my usual morning routine about the excitement that's that I'm generating or that I'm feeling. I like to talk about it as my, that I'm generating it. And of course, it's a, a trip like this for somebody like me who's pretty much a homebody is a big
Yeah.
deal, right? If I haven't been
Yeah.
back to this place in 45 years, but I
Wow.
loved it so much that the only way I could leave it was promise myself I would come back often, I'd make enough money to travel back there. And here it is 45 years later, I've never been back.
Oh my God, that's huge. That
So,
really is huge.
and I was thinking about the energy that has been ramping up, that I've been generating, the excitement, et cetera. And the kind of an insight that came to me this morning was how much better I've gotten over the years at generating that kind of energy about everyday things,
Oh, that's great.
right? It used to be that I would only feel that kind of excitement if one of these big events was happening that hadn't happened in a long time, or if a trip was planned or whatever. And yet, with the use of the tools and with the constant reminders that as I remind others, I'm reminding myself that we create our own experience of life moment to moment.
Hmm.
And although this particular flavor of energy is going to be different because I'm going to be going and seeing two friends from high school and a friend from graduate school and territory I haven't been to since, 45 years ago. The level of excitement I can generate and frequently do. I generated about the support groups, or I generated about coming to work and seeing, patients when there's not all kinds of crises going on, and gratitude for my state of life at this stage in my life. And it just struck me this morning that I've gotten a lot better over the years at generating this kind of appreciation for even the everyday things in life, which is, one of the primary factors that I use to explain how I'm enjoying life better these days.
Mm.
And as so many of these teachings tell us, whether it's Roger McGowan on death row in Texas for something he didn't commit, and telling us that it's a choice. You can always choose for love. You can always choose to view everything that occurs in your life as a lesson or as the stepping stones to take you where you need to go rather than as obstacles for what you want to accomplish.
There's a certain kind of momentum that doing the wake up sheets or the mind shifters or whatever we're doing creates. Like it isn't a, for me, it isn't a one on one thing. I just notice having tackled one goal or another, and it's not even one thing. It's over a period of time. My experience has been the same. And for instance, having my son move away, I was curious to see how that would pan out, how I would feel. I imagined feeling far more upset than I'm feeling, but I wanted to leave it open to see what it really did feel like. And it's totally new. And it's not bad. It's exciting, different, different flavor. You used a word, healing tone, or what did you say? Mind and no, it was something else. You used a phrase. It's just right.
You
I
mean
would,
just this morning, what I
yeah,
was
just
feeling?
now, yeah, what it felt like to be doing this. The
Well,
phrase from,
that I'm creating
mhm,
whatever level of excitement I'm feeling.
right, but is it a one-on? I mean, you don't set out to create that. You find that it has happened as a result of the
No, no,
growing
no,
you with.
no. What I'm saying is that I've learned over the years, and with practice, I have much more consciously, much more often set
Mm,
out to create it,
mm-hmm,
even for the everyday things in life, like, going for a walk or going out fishing or coming to work and seeing patients. As
mm,
long as I'm not, dreading somebody who's in a major crisis that I'm going to have to try and find some magic words to fix. Of course, we know
mm,
that doesn't happen. But my mind
mm,
can go in that direction too. And when it does, then I
yeah,
don't generate as much excitement and joy
mm-hmm,
and
mm,
gratitude. But I'm consciously far more often these days because of the work, because of the reminders about the work, I'm consciously choosing to
mm,
generate the gratitude and the excitement and the appreciation for everyday living things.
mm,
And that has made a world of difference in my ability to just enjoy and appreciate this phase of my life.
yeah. Are you finding you have expectations, or are you just pretty open about what's going to happen?
You mean for this trip?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, what I've noticed from the very beginning is that thoughts about what if this, what if that creep up, and I just actively work at letting them go
Mm-hmm.
because I have no idea what's going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
And if I choose a set of expectations, I'm setting myself up for disappointments.
Yeah. It's true.
But I do know that, as I've done adventures and trips in the past, they take on their own life
Mm,
and things unfold, whether it's, going to high school or going to college or deciding to raise a family or whatever. You can't ever know when you start out how it's going to be and what you might learn and what might unfold. And yet, what I've learned, fortunately, over the decades is it all works out.
mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really do me any good whatsoever to generate upset or frustration or even the worry,
Mm,
right? The anxious anticipation, there's no benefit to it.
yeah.
I did it for decades. It never paid any dividends.
Yeah.
I never benefited from it. So I don't do it as much these days. And if I find myself in a spin like that, I pick up the tools
Mm-hmm.
and I
How
either
it,
start feeling it and doing the EFT tapping and the breath work with some phrases like, I allow this feeling to be here, I feel it fully, and I release it to let it flow through me.
yeah. How are you traveling?
You mean how am I getting out to Seattle and then Oregon? We're
Yeah.
flying out tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
and then renting a car to do lots of driving
Wow.
through Washington State and Oregon and Northern California.
And you're going by yourself?
No, I'm going with a friend who has a cousin out in Seattle,
Oh, cool.
and who hasn't been to this part of the country that I, spent 5 years in after college.
Yeah. Oh, we'll have a great time.
That's the plan. However it works, to have a good time and to understand that that's possible even if every plan that we had falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever we are, we can choose for joy, we can choose for love over fear, and create, um, a lovely experience.
Mm.
That's the idea. That's the
Yeah.
teachings that have resonated so well with me over the decades and of course, whether it's a therapy technique or a philosophy from some spiritual teaching or psychological thinking, whatever has worked really well for me, those are the things that I tend to share with others.
Mm.
And it doesn't matter how many times I've been to trainings where people say, man, this is it. This is the newest, hottest thing. This is fabulous. If it doesn't work for me, I don't use it and I don't share it with my patients.
Yeah.
Not because it's not valuable, but just because it doesn't feel like I would be able to do it justice. Because if I haven't had the lived experience with it,
Yeah.
it's a whole different thing. It'll come off as mechanical or
Yeah.
contrived if I try to use it with others. So this idea of choosing for joy, regardless of what happens, is something that I've been able to do more and more over the past few decades, and it's just paid huge dividends in my life, so I keep doing it and sharing the idea of it with others.
Mm.
Like the truth of life. I resonate so much with the teachings from Michael Singer when he talks about. Just think about it this way: our scientists today, the hard scientists, right? The best guess they have about the origins of our universe is that it started 13.84 billion years ago. And
Mm.
everything that you're looking at, your body, all the material things in your life, the other people you look at, everything is made up of these energy packets we call atoms, and they all began in stars.
Mm.
And they
Oh.
all began from stars that were created after the Big Bang. So here's been this flow of creative energy that began 13.84 billion years ago, and it's been creating and expanding and creating ever since. And that's what's giving rise to every event you experience and every thought you have and every person that you greet. And just think about the silliness of thinking that with my conscious logical mind, Michael Rice calls it the nine-bit mind, and Guy Finley calls it the mechanical level of consciousness. With my little conscious logical mind, I'm going to experience what happens today. And instead of saying, oh, this is the result of 13.84 billion years of creation expanding, I'm going to say, this shouldn't be happening. And to just sit with how silly that is,
Mm.
that I'm going to judge whatever happens as bad or wrong, then it opens me to be able to do what the Way of Mastery says, which is dismantle every level of judgment. And what the Course in Miracles calls us to, and Way of Mastery calls us to, dismantle my perceptions, to understand that even at their best, they're only partially true
Mm.
and perhaps completely false. Right? It's my using my 9-bit mind to try to force the world to turn out the way I think it should. I just, it's kind of a tightrope that we walk sometimes. I was reading something from one of my favorite authors. Um, she posted something on Substack or whatever today. I was reading it, and she was talking about how the problem is, there's a quote from somebody, she really likes it. And the quote is, the problem is you think you have time.
Mm.
And her message was about how she's quite open about her um, problem with alcohol and addiction and how it almost killed her and she had to fight her way back from that. And the tightrope is between buying into fear
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing, you know what, if there's a window that opens for me to recognize there's something better for me to do, I should step through that window. That the door opens, I should step through the door. The door may close,
Mm.
right? And she talked about a friend of hers that was a teacher and had a drinking problem, and she said, you know what, this school year's been so rough. I'm gonna drink for the summer, but then in the fall, I'm gonna get back on the wagon. She didn't make it to the fall,
Uh,
right? She drank so much she died as a young person,
mm.
relatively young in her 40s or 50s.
That's so.
And there are all kinds of stories like that people say, I have these plans, but I don't act on them. And then the opportunity ends, right? Either my life ends or that the person I was going to make amends with is no longer there, et cetera. So I keep, what's the word? I keep trying to share how it resonates so solidly, beautifully with me that the message of fear not, fear not, fear not, right? So the fear is
Mm.
never the right choice. And you'll hear people, even Dr. Michael Rice, say this and quote how many times Yeshua says in the scriptures, fear not. But then also, it will creep into their teaching that you better get going, you better hurry up, you better,
Right.
right. And so it's that fine line, right? It's that tightrope for me,
Right.
but between acknowledging that, hey, there's an opportunity here. And if I take it, I'll have one set of outcomes. And if I don't, that's okay too. I'll get a different set of outcomes.
Mm.
I may or may not prefer it, but it's all going to work out, right? Not everybody believes it's all going to work out, but the teaching that resonates most solidly with me is the one that says, look, you don't need to sweat the little things. Oh, and by the way, they're all little things.
Mm.
I'm fairly certain that it's come up in the book of Walking the Physical that it's okay because everybody's going to eventually awaken to their true being. Yep. Yeah, I just opened up the book again and here it is at the end of the last Q&A I was reading. He says, but one way or another, ultimately, all people always return to the love and joy that is their true being. Well, if that's true, right? If it's true that all people eventually return to their awareness of their true nature, then we don't need to panic.
Mm.
We don't need the fear. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm breathing on that one because there's just so much external craziness going on that we're challenged to remember that and remember it and keep remembering it and remind ourselves.
Well, but here's the other thing is that when you say it the way you just did, you've labeled it as craziness, right? And so you've labeled it as bad or wrong.
Right, I have. That's
And
true.
and as soon as you do, just notice the tension you experience within yourself,
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
right?
Got it.
And you might want to look at some of the teachings like the teaching in the way of mastery that says we don't know what anything is or is for, and we certainly don't know what any of our brothers or sisters truly need.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can benefit by awakening to that. And there's even an exercise in the Way of Mastery that says, spend some time every day where you pick up an object in your world and you look at it and you just let yourself understand you don't know where this came from. You
Mm-hmm.
don't know where the materials that are in it were sourced from. You don't know the first time a human being had a thought to create something that would be like a cup or a pen or a lamp. And just let it sink in that we're walking around with this false sense of control and understanding, and it's all made up. And then we allow ourselves to settle into what the Way of Mastery calls divine ignorance. And it even talks about how Yeshua in his life went into every situation not knowing and understanding that he doesn't know, and asking to be taught by life in the moment. Well, just think about how that, just notice how that rankles for the Western mind.
Mm.
I mean, this whole, everything I was ever taught about God and Jesus and all that was that, Jesus is God and Jesus has the answers and Jesus is going to save you. And then you reach a teaching like the Way of Mastery that says, Jesus understands he doesn't do any of this stuff. It's the source of life within him that does these things. It's not a personality called Jesus that does these things. And that he doesn't truly know what anything is or is for. And yet he can learn in the moment, through the moment, by asking to be taught by life, by light, by Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it. As we say so often, Uh, I can't imagine that any ascended being or creator or Holy Spirit type entity would have any emotional investment in whether or not I used a certain name for it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that's been coming to me a lot lately is the book by Joseph S. Benner titled The Impersonal Life.
Mm.
Do you remember us talking about that years ago?
Yeah, I do.
And it's one of those books that I don't mind talking about because it's available for free access through the website christmind.info. And you can go there and read the whole book.
Oh,
And I was literally having a couple of thoughts over the past few weeks that maybe we should do that again.
that would be great.
We haven't read or talked about in detail the book by Joseph S. Benner titled The Impersonal Life. So it's coming up right now because I just mentioned that I can't imagine that any deity or entity or true, ascended master or whatever is going to get emotionally offended the way a high school kid might if you called them a name that they didn't
Right.
like or the wrong
Mm-hmm.
name.
Mm. Or didn't take them as the only way.
So christmind.info. Feel free to go there and check out the book by Joseph S. Benner, The Impersonal Life. It was written in 1914, and it is. We read through most of it in the support group before people started to bring in other issues that needed to be dealt with. But the essence of it is that that which is creating this flow of life, all of the planets and all of the laws and rules about the physical world, etc. That which creates that kind of an experience probably isn't wrestling with its ego.
Yeah.
Probably isn't worried about feeling inadequate. And that's one of the things that comes through if you read The Way of Mastery very carefully. It says, do you think that the Creator doubted its worthiness or ability to bring forth the creation or to bring forth the people, the souls? No, it just said, hey, I have this idea I'm going to create, and just starts extending itself and creating. So all of that stuff about judging and fear and a belief in separation and worried about what other people think about, none of that is happening at a creator level. It's only happening at this dream of separation level.
Right. That's why Jesus could say, and I don't know if this is a real translation because there have been so many, when he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, he wasn't taking an ego trip.
No, not in the least, because especially if you listen to people like Dale Allen Hoffman, when he talks about those quotes, he says, look, from the ancient Aramaic, there are a few times where he says I, and he's referring to Yeshua as a person.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time, he's saying I. He's saying the I within the I. He's saying the soul behind, the energy behind the soul.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking about the one mind, the divine mind, the Christ mind, which is not a Jesus Christ. It's this uh, energetic access to experiential wisdom that goes way beyond the intellect.
And is accessible to everyone.
Yes, yes. Because the I behind the I has given rise to everyone, right? The I that gave rise to me is the same I that gave rise to you. And so, this message, I am the truth and the light, is, and no one comes to the Father except through me, is the idea that um, that which gave rise to me
Mm.
is the only way because it's the same thing that gave rise to you. So going back to your source, getting to know your true self better,
Mm.
getting to accept that you've never been separated from your source. That's the only way to fully awaken to your true nature and then get access to all of the joy, the excitement, the bliss state that is your birthright. But the essence of it is if you find the ancient Aramaic language and you follow somebody like Dale Allen Hoffman, who studied it and is really working to try and be to the best of his ability, the active practicer of those truths, that the words that were said in the ancient Aramaic, or that were at least reported to have been said by Yeshua and others, have very different meanings than what most of us have been exposed to through the biblical stories, etc.
Mm.
And as Dr. Michael Rice likes to point out from time to time, he says, if you're looking at this person as, God on earth or the Son of God, etc., and him as a great spiritual teacher, it would be kind of important to understand the words he actually said, right? And in the context in which he said them, and the language in which he said it, etc., with all of the knowledge about the colloquialisms and the idioms. And if you're reading the King James Version of the Bible, you've got almost none of that.
Mm. Mm.
And that's not just the King James Version, that's every English version of a Bible,
Mm.
because as it is such a shock to so many people's systems to think about this, if there was a person by the name of Yeshua, he never spoke English.
Mm. You're helping me understand something. I don't know whether it was you or Michael who gave me the task of writing letters to myself from God, from the point of view of God, pretending I'm God or channeling God. And what I got it was very easy. I got a lot of incredibly loving stuff, but I was totally barfed out. And everything you're saying,
What do you mean you were barfed out? What does that mean?
I mean, I got the squirms. I was uncomfortable with it. It wasn't a language my mother or dad would speak. Not that they didn't love me, but they never used language like that. I kind of
Language like what?
very loving, affectionate. Uh, well, I have them in the other room. I mean, I wrote several letters, and the task was to write a letter every day from God to myself. And I stopped doing it after a while because what I got was, first of all, I thought, well, this is just me talking to me in a language I would love to believe was true and love that I heard from someone who really loved me, but I don't buy any of it. It's not right. And so I thought, I'll never find my way but to God. But what you're saying right now isn't isn't barfy. Sorry, I'm using that word, but that's just a word I've always used. It isn't gross. It isn't embarrassing. It seems perfectly sensible and available and accessible to everyone without shame or fear. Anyway, I guess I went off on a tangent there.
Well, but what you're referring to is probably how we talked about writing a letter to yourself from unconditional love.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And that's a practice that comes from Elizabeth Gilbert,
Mm-hmm.
the author of Eat, Pray, Love, and a bunch of other books.
Right. This is ringing true. That's
And
it.
and when you have that, she's been doing the practice for over 20 years, if I remember correctly, where she sits down pretty much every day and gets a quiet space and a piece of paper, and she writes at the top, "Dear love, what would you have me know today?"
Mm,
And then just write as though unconditional love is writing to you.
mm-hmm.
And one of those that was so moving for me was when Glennon Doyle shared hers,
Mm,
and when she started the writing, it was about uh, forgiveness.
mm,
And so, I'm glad you mentioned it. Let's have a conversation about forgiveness. And then unconditional love writes all about how forgiveness is a broader, deeper perspective
mm,
and the bigger picture. And, it's reminded me of how we have been talking lately about how if you're looking at something and it seems paradoxical, you're seeing somebody says you can retain your individuality and yet you blend with all that is.
mm,
Well, our intellectual human mind says that can't be true. You either have your individuality or you're lost in all that is. The essence of that is if you create a thought or a vision of something, or you have an experience of something that seems to not make any sense,
mm,
the essence of this teaching is you're only in that moment when things don't seem to make sense, you're only seeing a small bit of the picture.
mm-hmm.
And when you see the whole big picture, everything makes sense. And that's essentially what Glennon Doyle was told when she was doing this writing is that from the perspective of unconditional love or God or light or all that is, whatever you want to call it, every one of us and everything that happens with us makes perfect sense. Now, you're not going to find too many teachers that go along with that. Michael Rice won't go along with that. He said in the past couple days on his show, he said things like, "I don't agree with that." When somebody mentioned something
Oh
about
yeah.
all,
Uh,
all events are neutral, I don't think that's true. Okay, okay.
right.
So there aren't, a whole lot of teachers who are going to go along with saying it all makes sense and it's all going to work out. But that's part of what we were just talking about in this lesson from um, Christian Sundberg's book, and he's reading in answer to a question. He's giving an answer that he thinks makes sense, and it says, "Listen, don't worry." It's almost like the Bill Hicks thing. Life is like a ride at an amusement park. It's all okay because it's just a ride.
Hmm.
Well, not all teachers are going to agree with that. And here, Christian Sundberg says at the end of the question that I've read that a person who's restless in this earthly life will probably remain that in the afterlife. Do we not get peace when we die? And he writes this whole, it's not a long answer. He says, peace is native. It's fundamental to true being with a capital B. At a given level of self, though, you might have certain patterns that lead through various manifest experiences, whether it's in this reality or others. And with the death of the body, the physical body falling away, the constraints of biology are always relinquished. And much of our current hardship is contained in those physical constraints and the
Hmm.
physical body constraints. He says, it is possible that fear can continue to lead the individual into certain manifest experiences for a time, or perhaps even for a long time. And yet, he says, one way or the other, ultimately, all people always return to the love and joy that is their true capital B being. So it's just like the Bill Hicks life is like a ride in an amusement park.
Mm.
You remember me reading that before?
No, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Right. You're saying it now.
Well, Bill Hicks has a very often told, and I've woven this. Um, it's a long quote, but it's a quote. It's a statement of things. And I've woven it into a number of different talks I've given over the years where it's, just kind of come to me to say, and sometimes I quote parts of it just because it spur of the moment and it wasn't even planned. But the quote is as follows: the world is like a ride in an amusement park. And when you choose to go on it, you think it's real because that's how powerful our minds are. And the ride goes up and down and round and round. It has thrills and chills. It's very brightly colored and it's very loud. And it's fun for a while. Many people have been on the ride a long time and they begin to wonder, hey, is this real or is this just a ride? And other people have died and remembered and they've come back to us and they say, hey, 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 don't worry. Don't be afraid ever because this is just a ride.
Mm.
And we kill those people. Shut him up. I got a lot invested in this ride. Look at the furrows of worry. Look at my big bank account. Look at my family. This has to be real,
Mm.
but it's just a ride. And we always kill the good guys who try to tell us that. Have you ever noticed that? And we let the demons run amok. And yet it doesn't matter because it's just a ride. And we can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings of money, just a simple choice right now between fear and love. The eyes of fear want you to put bigger locks on your doors, buy guns, and close yourself off. The eyes of love instead see all of us as one. Here's what we can do to change the world right now to a better ride. Take all that money we spend on weapons and defenses each year, and instead spend it on feeding, clothing, and educating the poor of the world, which it would pay for many times over, not one human being excluded. And then we could explore space together, both inner and outer space, forever in peace. But it's just a ride. Now again, you may not find that many teachers that will agree with that teaching. So, we're offering it as a thought experiment. And Donald said, yes, please read that book again, The Impersonal Life. I think Sally was giving a thumbs up saying she has that book. So there are 3 short comments here, but feel free to type more comments in or unmute and speak up. We have 14 minutes left. Did that stir something up for you, Sue?
Oh, it was great, and I do remember it. Yeah, I remember you've read that before or talked about it before. Well, the only thing it stirs up is Tim Bingham and I are about to go to a peace march on Saturday, and I'm still going to go, but with
of
a
course.
different perspective.
Yeah, this isn't about not doing things. This is just about paying attention to the mental, emotional stress we create
Mm-hmm.
and then unwittingly blame it on other people and things rather than understanding that we're the one creating it.
That's really a tall order, but I hear you. Ongoing work.
Yeah, well, it's related to the insight I had, kind of a flooding I had this morning where I was realizing that as I'm experiencing all of this excitement and energy about the upcoming trip, how much better I've gotten at being able to generate those kinds of energies for my everyday life. And just the realization that it's all an inside job. And if you're not excited about your life, you could choose to generate excitement about the very life you're living right now. That's another lesson from the Way of Mastery. Your life, your very life right now, whether it's doing dishes or making a bed or answering a phone call from somebody who's angry at you or something, your very life is the perfect ashram, the perfect teaching school for you to awaken fully to the extension of love in form that you are. And as such, you could choose to get all kinds of happy and excited and joyful and grateful about everything that transpires in your life. Even the car accident you don't want, even the apparent physical illness that occurs. You could choose to look at everything that happens in your life as the perfect occurrence, like the teaching that comes from Byron Katie in her work, how she realized that she only suffers, she doesn't suffer from her negative thoughts. She only suffers when she pours her mind energy into it and starts believing her negative thoughts. And then another part of her teaching says she realizes that everything that's already happened is just perfect. How does she know that? Because it's already happened. Because it's part of that flow of life, that 13.84 billion years of creation extending. How could it be wrong if it's happening? Well, the fact of the matter is it can't be wrong unless there's a human being around to judge it and label it as such. This is why I talk about how, we bring this up every once in a while. and we ask people to tune into the fact that there is no such thing as a natural disaster. And people say, what do you mean? There's a hurricane, there's a flood, yeah, but there's only nature unless there's a human being around to label it as a disaster. Otherwise, it's just the flow of life.
I love that phrase, it's a thing. It's very popular. People say that it's a thing. That's what you're saying.
I'm saying it is what it is, kind of thing, right? Life is just life. Unless you have a person around who has been taught language, who has an intellect that, as the Way of Mastery says, has been shoved full of trivialities, and that arrangement of the trivialities in that human being's mind decides to label this as bad or wrong.
Mm.
But it's like the story. I was telling you that I had read this book that I really enjoyed, and it was Positive Intelligence. And in the book Positive Intelligence, I knew that Shirzad Shamin, who is the author, has tapped into a number of different pieces of source material that are similar to mine because he told two different stories in the book that I've actually told when I've been doing public speaking engagements. And one of them is the story of the man who lived in the mountain town, and he was there with his only son. His wife had died, his other kids had died, and he was down to just one horse to work this mountainous, rocky terrain and try and, hard scrabble life. And he really annoyed his neighbors, to use poor regulatory speech. To use accurate regulatory speech, his neighbors would often generate a lot of irritation and blame him for it. And they often would use this idea that no matter what happens, we can't get this guy to agree with us that it's either good or bad. He's always just saying, oh, well, maybe good, maybe bad, we'll see.
Right.
And so he's there, he's trying to get this farm going, and he and his son are working hard, and really a tough life. They've got this horse to help them get, and all of a sudden they wake up one morning and the horse has gotten out of the corral and run away. And the neighbors come by and say, oh, that's a horrible thing. You terrible, terrible luck. And the farmer goes, oh, I don't know, maybe good, maybe bad. We'll see. Oh, how can you say that? You lost your only horse. And well, a couple days later, they wake in the morning to find out here comes the one horse they had that got away, and it's leading a pack of wild mustangs and leads them right into the corral. And the son runs out and closes the gate, and now they've gone from rags to riches, right? Because horses are worth a lot of money, and now they've got 6 or 8 horses. And neighbor comes over and says, wow, you're so lucky. Well, I don't know, maybe good, maybe bad, we'll see.
Yeah.
And a few days later, his son's trying to break one of the wild Mustang horses and falls off and badly breaks his leg. And the neighbor comes by and says, oh, it's terrible luck. I don't know, maybe good, maybe bad, we'll see. And then the next week, the king's men come through and take every able-bodied young man into the army so they can go off and march off to war because the king wants more cows or something and wants to take over the next kingdom. But they can't take his son because he's got a badly broken leg. The neighbor says, well, you're so lucky. How'd you get so lucky? And the farmer says, I don't know, maybe good, maybe bad, we'll see. People don't want to accept that frame of reference, especially if they've been taught to judge everything as right or wrong, good or bad, this dichotomous thinking, categorical thinking, if you will. And yet, if you adopt well, we'll see, could be good, could be, I wonder how this is going to work out better than I could have imagined. I wonder how this situation that I didn't want is going to turn into a blessing. I wonder how this situation that I never would have planned for myself is going to lead me to the lessons I need to learn to move forward in my life. That perspective is what we offer. That's the perspective that comes from the Way of Mastery when it says you'll go farther, you'll learn more if you approach every situation aware of your divine ignorance, aware that there's a lot more going on here than your conscious logical mind can sort out. Probably, if you're aware that there's a lot more going on here than any spiritual teacher you ever run into is aware of. Oh, what's he doing? He's attacking spiritual teachers. I got to turn this guy off.
Uh,
I
But
love it. Thank you. And please read The Impersonal Life.
with Joseph S. Benner.
Yes. You guys, you're so spot on. It's just what I needed to hear today. I love it. Just a little reminder that I'm heading in the right direction, and the timeless flow is also a flow of no time. So I could get on with it, whatever it is that I choose to do, create for myself. Thanks.
You're most welcome and deserving. I hope that it leads you to a practice which yields results you prefer.
Yes, it is. And I want to, I don't need to do anything. I am going to text Rena and tell her how much I appreciate that 5-minute meditation from lesson 3 about sitting in a chair and practicing what would it be like to sit in a chair and be Christ, a Christ.
As the Christ,
and,
right?
As the Christ. And the second one from, I think it was lesson 10, it was an Easter meditation, and they dovetail with each other perfectly, and I've started doing that. And I'm going to focus more. I am choosing right now to focus more on blessing, because I'm seeing how what comes out of my mouth is so often veiled complaint that I don't even see. And I'm also appreciating that I'm getting feedback from other people about my certain behaviors that I realize come from unfinished business issues from my childhood. So I'm using these blessings and sitting as Christ in a chair. And I think I'll pick up the blessing statement for others that Michael has created and the one for myself and start using them. And I've got an approach that feels really right for my heart healing. And the heart is the center between the mind and the body, the love of God. And so I'm really blessed. I'm blessed with all of this. I'm blessed with my partner, and I'm blessed with my husband, and I'm blessed with where I am in the moment. And I still have this tendency to complain. Isn't that amazing? Besides which, I'm the last to know. Everybody knows before I do.
Well, keep your mind open, keep your breath working, and ask to be shown, and you'll figure it out sooner or later. Like the reading we were just doing from the Christian Sundberg's book, there is a school of thought that says everyone will come awake to their true loving nature eventually. Well, thank you both for your comments and questions. What were you going to say? Quick.
I just wanted to say that asking to be shown, and Rainier Marie Rilke's quote that you have said so often is just about living into the answer. That's my primary, that's my bottom line, first go-to.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome and deserving. I will be back on Tuesday the 24th. There won't be any first hour shows for a while. although Jeanie has announced they are going to do take one of those 2-hour blocks and do some still point breathing for those who are interested. We come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false.